Welcome to What Do You Want to Do? The show that will hopefully help you figure out what you want to do in life or reconnect you to what you love doing. Each show has a guest who is doing what they love to do, whether it's in their career or in addition to their regular job. Most importantly, we want to help you realize that no matter your age, you too can do what you want to do if you have the will to do it. Now here's your host, Leonard Kaplan.
Today's feature interviewee I met in 2012 when we were both guests on After Hours with T.C. Rastani. He's a writer, director, actor, singer, and theater teacher. His group, the King Serpent Variety Troupe, is very well known throughout New England. He's a consummate performer, and more important than that, a very nice guy, David Breen. Welcome back to What Do You Want to Do? And my special guest is David Breen, who is a musician, a comedian, an actor, an acting teacher, a drama specialist, a director. You name it, he does it with adults, with kids, in schools, on stage, on film maybe too. Have you ever done film?
A little bit of film, not too much. Back in the day when I was first starting out, I did have a lead and a supporting role in a couple of films.
That's great. We'll have to talk about that maybe a little later.
Sure.
So the gist of What Do You Want to Do, because you've never been on, is I like to talk to people about their aspirations from when they were a kid or some seminal moment when they decided that they wanted to work in the arts or they wanted to get into the arts and get involved somehow. Some do it as a career, some do it as multiple careers, some do it on the side. So you, I think, do all of the above because you live, eat, and breathe all this stuff.
Pretty much. Yeah, I pretty much do it, on a regular basis. And we'll talk about this a little bit later. It was kind of by accident, and it always seems to be by accident how I end up doing this and making a living at it and making it work. It's wonderful, but it's pretty much been my identity for about almost 30 years now, and it's been great.
The goal here with the whole series is to show people that no matter what your age, no matter what your experience and what your background is, if you want to work toward something in the arts, you can become involved, you can be successful, you can be making a living even in some cases. No, I want you to go back. Now you're maybe 10 years old. Did you have any idea when you were 10 years old what you wanted to do?
I always knew that I liked entertaining. I used to put on shows, dress up in my parents' clothes and put on these shows for my family. And, it was a lot of fun. I mean, one of the things I've never been good at it, but I loved magic when I was a kid. I used to love watching magicians perform. If we were anywhere and there was a magician, if he called me out to assist him, I used to get really excited. And what I used to do is put on these magic shows, but I, of course, would say, okay, here's the trick. Now, I'm going to make this coin disappear. But first, look over there. To basically get my family and my brothers and sister to look the other way so I could perform the magic. Probably, though, the first time I ever knew that I had a passion for this stuff was when I was 10 years old. I entered the school talent show one year doing a lip sync of Elvis's Heartbreak Hotel.
Oh, wow.
And and first of all, let me apologize for the sound in the background. I'm on my porch because I get better phone reception and you will hear traffic. So if you need me to repeat anything, Leonard, just let me know.
You're not being drowned out.
Okay,
It
good.
adds atmosphere, that's all.
I just wanted to make sure. So anyway, I performed Heartbreak Hotel as a lip sync. And just at the end of it, I got such an adrenaline rush that I really looked forward every year to the school talent shows. And I will admit, I probably wasn't the most popular kid growing up. Even though I was going to a school that I excelled in, I will get this right out in the open. I am dyslexic, and I also do have mild ADD, which also gave me a drive for this too, because as most people who have learning disabilities, they find something that they can excel at outside of school. And this was me. Performing was something that I actually, it was something to enhance and help me with school as well. Um,
Right, right.
so with that in mind, after I got that rush at the talent show, I looked forward to um, every year the school talent show coming, because I wasn't the most popular kid. But then the minute that sign up went up, I'd put my name down, but I wouldn't put what I was doing for an act because I hadn't decided yet. Next thing I know, I'm getting the popular kids coming to me basically saying, Dave, what the heck? Your name's on here, but no act. What is going on here? Come on, buddy. Chop, chop. I'm like, guys, chill. I haven't decided yet. I'm still working on it. I'm like, well, you better, because we're ready for you.
That's great. So entertainment was sort of a way out for you, away from some of the problems that maybe you were experiencing with this dyslexia and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. You hit it on the nose, Leonard, how I would have put it.
Because my good friend, the late Paul Fay, who started Wrestling Talk with me, my other show, he had dyslexia, and it was a problem for him. But it also gave him, I think, a very in-depth visual imagination. And even
Yes.
though he didn't write things down, when I was with him, we would spontaneously create videos and commercials and things like that, and it was just amazing. He freed my mind from the literal interpretations that sometimes I would go into, like having to write a complete script or anything like that. The power to ad lib is a real gift, and he had that, and I bet you have that too.
Absolutely.
That's great.
I will admit, not to toot my own horn, but yes, I do. I have excelled in improv, and one of my first jobs professionally in the industry was working for an improv murder mystery theater, and I really excelled to the point where I got bumped up to like principal cast very, very quickly.
That's amazing. So now we started off when you were 10, and I randomly picked the age where you went into that show, which I'm not psychic, but maybe I am. I don't know. So now let's skip ahead, and it's time for you to choose a career. And this is what I ask all my guests. Did you think, I want to do this for a living? I want to do something like this for a living? And if you did, what were the reactions of your parents?
Basically, my senior year, I decided I was going to go to college for communications. Now, my parents were very supportive of that. And I will admit, my father, just to jump back a little bit, when I was in high school, my father used his business contacts to try to pull some strings for me, knowing that I was interested. And I also did get some film and communication courses at the school I went to as well. So my father pulled some strings to get me into the Bunker Hill television studio. This was back when I was probably a sophomore in high school, to help them out and volunteer, because he had a friend who was a business associate that hosted a political show. So I thought by the time I was a senior, I was going to go into communications.
Like me.
Pretty much, yeah. But I still wanted to perform, and that's what kind of alarmed my parents a little bit, because I was sort of jumping around between school and eventually doing performing. I started doing a lot of community theater and excelling in that. And again, because of my learning disability, I found a niche where not only was I excelling at, but I was getting treated respectfully.
Right.
So, bouncing between the two was a little alarming for my parents. And I would have probably stuck with communications if I could have done from the beginning what I really wanted to do. Doing volunteering and doing these local cable shows where you're basically answering to the host and they're, the I'm going to use the word, and I apologize for this, very bland style shows talking about finance and politics and everything.
Yeah.
For me at 17, 16, 17, that was okay.
Right.
Now I'm 20, 21. I'm starting to get my own
Yeah.
feelings on the subject,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be more on a creative level. I wanted to do something like Saturday Night Live, where I'm writing these shows and I'm performing. Hold that thought for a sec. There is an ambulance driving by. This happens a lot in my neighborhood here in Lynn. So anyway, so I wanted to do something more like Saturday Night Live, where I'm writing these skits and directing them and even performing where I have to. Nobody at that time wanted to do that. So I finally just said, forget it. I jettisoned communications and decided I wanted to take professional acting courses and try to excel on that end. And yeah, my parents were not happy about it. They supported it
on that,
but
because I think that's a very big commonality with the World War II generation, as your parents probably were, growing up in the
yes.
Depression. That security was foremost, first and foremost, in their minds. It's not that they wanted to stifle you, but I mean, this was the case with my parents. I wanted to be a comic book artist, and they said to me, "You go to college, and we'll pay for your college, but we're not going to pay for art school." Now, back at that time, if that sounds harsh, there was no Photoshop, there was no graphic design, there was no, you were the literal starving artist if you weren't really excelling or had the contacts at that time.
Yep.
So now in your case, how did you get around your parents' opposition? This is key now.
Okay. I hate to say it, I avoided them whenever I could during this time period. Even though I was living at home, living with them, and working part-time with at my father's office,
Right.
and making money, it was about I just avoided them whenever I could.
Yeah. That's very tough. Very, very tough, and I made the decision. I wasn't sure of myself as an artist, as a visual artist. So I said, yeah, I can't afford college. And I buckled under, and I've tried to major in chemistry, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
And I was a total washout. My father was a chemist, so I figured I'd try that. I took calculus and physics, and I was flunking them all. I almost flunked out of college. And luckily, I discovered history. I love history, and ultimately journalism, and because I love writing most of all. So how was it with you? Was it maybe a similar experience?
It's interesting. You brought up a good point there. You said you were flunking out of college.
Yes.
That's when that was a time where my parents had to relent because I was basically flunking out of college.
Yeah.
Part of it was my learning disability, but part of it was simply because I just wasn't, at that point, I knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And, and just said, all right, this is what I'm excelling at. This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm getting accepted at. And that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, I'm 23 at the time. So I was very young and very, I'll use the word, a little on the arrogant side back then.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine that. You're so easygoing, Dave.
Well, now I am.
Yeah.
Now I am. I mean, I've been seasoned. I've been humbled in many areas. So, and so that's kind of, what you see now is who I am. But that part of me still exists too.
So it's very interesting. You were able to overcome the opposition. Specifically, what did you do? Did you have another talk with your parents eventually about what you were going to do? Did they make you move out? Did you run away from home? What happened?
Well, eventually, what happened was my parents would share newspaper clippings that had jobs that they thought that I could excel at and still keep this art form alive. One of my first paying jobs outside of the actual industry of doing plays, doing commercials, doing improv theater, which by this time I was also doing and making some money, which kind of helped ease my parents a little bit,
What
was
town
that
was this in, Dave?
this was actually in Melrose, where I grew up.
I didn't know that. I
Um,
worked in Melrose many years.
mhm. Yeah, I grew up in Melrose, lived there um, up until probably about 2015 when I finally moved up this way. Um, but anyway, long story short, my mother shared with me a clipping that said that they are developing a project with the Old Town Trolley Company, and it still exists today, called Ghosts and Gravestones.
Mm-hmm.
It was half trolley, half walking tour guide, and the tour guide would be like a gravedigger character.
Right.
I applied for this, and they immediately hired me. The two founders of the walking portion of this tour were myself and a gentleman who was a professional reenactor. Um, this was actually a very, very good situation for me because working with this gentleman, he was probably, I wouldn't say he was around my age, but probably a little older, like early 50s.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't an actor, but I wasn't a reenactor. So during the process of getting this going and training to launch this Ghosts and Gravestones thing, we balanced each other. Like he taught me about storytelling and how to be a better historian, whereas I saw a lot of potential as a character for him, and I would work with him on character development. So that was really what started finally easing my parents when I got hired by Ghosts and Gravestones.
That's great. So, then you'd never look back after that.
Well, what ended up happening was I was working for Ghosts and Gravestones, and a colleague of mine found out she worked at the Witch Dungeon Museum over in Salem. I don't know if you know it, Leonard.
I know it.
Yeah. Well, they run 3 museums: the Witch Dungeon Museum, the Witch History Museum, and the New England Pirate Museum. My colleague got word that they desperately needed to hire a new tour guide. I don't know what the situation was, but they really needed somebody, and they needed that person in there right at that moment to step in for September and be ready to go for Haunted Happenings. I was still doing Ghosts and Gravestones, but this sounded like a really good opportunity. I agreed to at least go in and interview, and the woman hired me right away. So I became a pirate tour guide at the New England Pirate Museum, and eventually decided to leave Ghosts and Gravestones, and when the new season started, and then just was working full time up in Salem.
Now, where did you meet our mutual friend Giovanni? Was it in Melrose, where you're both from? Or was it...
This is way down the road. Do you want me to get into that now? Because Giovanni kind of came into the picture when I was kind of coming back in the industry around my late 30s, early 40s.
Tell us, okay, what happened after that? Now, how did you lead up to when you got involved with that magnificent group that you're with the comedy and the great vocal harmony that I hear? Because I love that stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, that portion of my life, actually, I was in a transition period at that time. After my parents both passed away, I was working a regular day job, but staying very active. I mean, I've always had the blessing that I've been able to stay active with the art and keep myself going. when my parents passed away, I was doing some occasional dinner theater gigs here and there, also co-running a haunted house up at Winnie Castle. And then for personal and professional reasons, I bowed out of the haunted house. And I kind of kicked around for a couple of years. I was singing with a folk band, and then eventually, during a period where I was totally out of work from day jobs, I volunteered for the Steampunk Festival in Waltham, helping them plan it, but also starting to develop these shows. I developed a pirate dinner theater show, and this was another thing too. Anybody needed a pirate, because I worked at the New England Pirate Museum. It was pretty much, call Dave Breen. He's got his own pirate costume. Get him involved.
Yeah.
So that started me on that path, and I had started to develop a couple of shows that unfortunately never got off the ground. And then eventually, I just said, I converted one of the shows into a one-man pirate show. The Steampunk Festival in Waltham made an offer to me that if I volunteered again, they would allow me to do the show. So I agreed, I did it, and it was a big success. So I decided, okay, where do I go from here? I've done the show, it's out there, it's finding an audience. Where do I go from here? So I decided to write a second show, which was a haunted pirate show. And I collaborated with an old colleague I used to work with years ago, and he agreed to write a couple of stories for me, because he writes a lot of ghost stories for his music group thing that he has. And when we had the folk group, one of the people that I kind of bonded with was the guitarist in the group. His name was Michael Bloom. Michael and I are different but the same in many ways.
Yes.
But one of the reasons why we mesh so well, I think, is because Michael and I have the same birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So he knew, because the band the rock band he was in at the time was also playing the Steampunk Festival. So his band got booked for that. My one-man pirate show got booked. So in the process, he and I just got to talking. We started doing some joint gigs together, but separately. He would go and play and sing some Richard Thompson tunes and 60s tunes. And I knew Michael was very talented. But another thing Michael excelled at was he knew public domain folk music. So my second show, the Haunted Pirate Show, I really decided that I wanted music. Headphones keep coming out, but that's okay. I really decided I wanted music. So I contacted Michael, made him an offer to be music director on that show. And basically we had a meeting. I said, all right, here's the deal. Whatever you come up with, as long as it's kind of sea shanty or gothic, my part in this is done. I've written the script for this. I think that you are the one to excel and bring the show to a next level, which he did. Our debut of the Haunted Pirate Show, when it was just the two of us, was very well received. We did it again at the Steampunk Festival. And everybody loved it. And through that, we met Josephine Boone, who is, I don't know if you've seen my recent shows. She's the main belly dancer and choreographer now in my shows.
Okay, I don't think I've seen those. I would have remembered that.
Okay. I met Josephine through the steampunk community, and she contacted me through Facebook. By this time, we were Facebook friends, and said she had this mermaid dance that she was developing, but she didn't have a showcase for it. How would I feel about adding that into one of my pirate shows?
Right.
Almost immediately, it was basically like, perfect. You're an incredibly talented dancer. I think there's a place for this. Give me a little bit of time. And working with Michael, we found a spot to add the dance in. And then it very quickly developed into, I mean, quickly, but not quickly. We still had to market it, and, getting gigs was slow in the process, but we eventually got to a point where we were working on a regular basis, had some clients, and were getting paid for them. And then there was this fundraising variety show that we always headlined. It was done at the Danvers Historical Society, and this is actually how I met Giovanni.
Okay.
And the guy who ran the show, like, basically loved the pirate stuff even back when it was me, and would want to book us in left and right for things. So we headlined this fundraising variety show. He called me one day and said, "Oh, by the way, we're switching to a Wild West theme. I don't know if that's going to be doable for you guys. You might have to work in some country music," which I will admit, at the time where I heard that, I'm like, "Oh my God, no." Because I'm not a big fan of country music. I love I love Johnny Cash and his old school stuff, but that's about as far as I go. But the troupe mates, by this time, Michael and Josephine, who still are the core of the troupe today, the main production team, because we got so many people in this troupe now.
Wow.
Michael and Josephine were the ones who basically told me, this could be an Excel. Maybe we shouldn't limit ourselves to just pirates. Maybe we could be like an outlaw themed troupe, and we can find some other themed shows to do. And I was kind of like, maybe. And then, oh God, who mentioned it? I think it was either Michael or Josephine. I don't remember exactly which one of them did, but they mentioned the idea of doing something with a Roaring Twenties gangster, rum runner, loan shark theme.
Right.
And immediately I was, my eyes just lit up.
Right.
Mainly because the closest I came to doing something in that time period was in 1995 when I played Rooster Hannigan in a production of Annie. I've never covered that period in my life.
Right. So
I viewed it not just as a way to put on a great show, but career advancement, because this would be the way for, by this time, people saw me as kind of the goth pirate guy, doing the haunted house, doing the pirate stuff, doing the haunted pirate stuff. It would be a chance for people to see me in a different light, as not just a performer, but also as a writer and an artist. So that's where that all came in. So eventually we had a Wild West theme show. We had the Roaring Twenties show that we did, which in my opinion is our best work.
Even better than the Pirates?
Honestly, it really is. It's
really
the most complex show that I've written, because I really painted myself in the corner because I was so enthusiastic about this show that if you take one aspect of this particular show out, it falls apart. So every character that I wrote had to be in the show because they had a specific purpose to the plot line of the show. So that's kind of where that developed. I will admit 90% of what gets booked for the King Serpent variety troupe is the pirate stuff.
Right.
These days, especially, and you probably know this too, with Pirates of the Caribbean and all that stuff, pirates have had a resurgence.
Sure.
And that's where we come, that's where we come in. So 90% of the time, the pirate shows are what get booked.
I guess you have Johnny Depp to thank for that, partially.
Partially, yeah. But I mean, I do still want to find an audience to continue to find an audience for my Wild West show and and of course, the King Serpent Follies, the Roaring Twenties show.
So let's talk about the range of your performances as far as geographically.
Okay.
So I see that you do some stuff at the Pearl Street Station, which is one of my favorite restaurants. You do it every New Year's Eve. Right?
Well, Unfortunately, we've jettisoned the New Year's Eve show because that was going to be a thing, but I decided that I want to continue doing shows there. I just don't want to do anything on New Year's Eve. It's too hard to sell, especially for somebody
Yeah,
my age.
yeah, yeah.
But
I understand that. And there's something you do down the Cape. I noticed that. Is it in
mhm.
Yarmouth or something?
Yes, we have a steady gig that we do. I've kind of had to pull out of it for the time being,
Hmm.
where we go down once or twice a year for the Irish Village Hotel's school vacation week,
Okay.
where we go down and we perform the pirate stuff down there.
Mhm.
Usually it's Michael and I,
With a
but the
well-known
last
pirate captain.
time I
She
went,
cuts
one
her
of our other
beautiful,
troop mates, Peggy, came
long
down
black
and she
hair,
performed with us,
nice and short,
which was great, and she had a
and
great
hers-
time.
Mhm.
Through doing that gig, we frequent over to the Witta Pirate Museum a lot of the time when we go down there,
Mhm.
which is the pirate museum put to honor Black Sam Bellamy, the famous pirate of the Wellfleet Cape Cod area.
Ah,
We met the manager, and she decided that she wanted. They had a couple of anniversary events, like the 300-year anniversary of the Witta pirate ship. They decided they wanted to book us.
okay.
So that's how we got, through doing the Irish Village. That's how we got the Witta Pirate Museum, and that's been a fairly steady client too. They're very, very good to us.
So what are some of the other cities and venues that you play around New England besides that?
Around New England, we usually do the Jewelry City Steampunk Festival, which is in Attleboro. It's a live steampunk event, and they book us at the Park Street Ale House. We usually are the headlining act over there. We have been for the past few years. This year they're going virtual, so we are involved with the event. It's being moved up to November, but because of the whole pandemic right now, they're going virtual. But we have been booked for that. So we do Attleboro for the Jewelry City event. We also do. We did an event called Mockenbakken, which was another steampunk festival. And the interesting story about Mockenbakken, we performed for another group that they had at the time, and we did a masquerade ball. And then a few people who were involved with that masquerade ball decided to branch out on their own. They really wanted us. Now, I am at a point right now where I don't do too many favors for people. I have to get paid. But because they have been so good to us and they have given me write up after write up, plugging my shows, trying to get me successful, I agreed to scratch their back and say, look, you really want us. We can take a pay cut for this. And they were basically like, no, absolutely not. You guys are too good, too talented, and you deserve to be paid. We are not booking you until we can pay you. To
That's
me,
amazing.
that showed tremendous respect.
Oh yeah.
So now we do the Mockenbakken event. We did it last year, and they were able to pay us. So we did it last year. It was wonderful. It was at a campground property in Kingston, New Hampshire.
Huh.
It was a great time. So we performed there, and as I said, yes, we still do perform at Pearl Street, just not on New Year's anymore.
Yeah.
I'm in conferences with management over there about what they want from us and what we're going to do for a show once this pandemic is over.
Right. Can't wait for that, huh? Gee.
And also, another person that I perform with regularly is our good friend, TC Rastani, After
Yeah.
Hours.
Yes.
I actually, TC is it has a special place because he's been with me ever since I started this.
Uh-huh.
One of his characters who I knew from my teen years actually was the one who hooked me up with TC. And I got invited to his barbecue show. He said, oh, by the way, dress to impress, meaning bring the pirate costume. He scheduled a podcast show with me as Captain David and him as TC. And then eventually he was able to finally put me on his television show doing the pirate
Right.
stuff.
And that's where I met you.
That's right. Yeah, that's where you and I met.
Yeah, I think 2015 or 2012, something like that.
2012, yeah, because that's right around where I was really pushing this stuff and launching it.
Yeah. Well, that's why come a long way with all of that stuff, and I can't remember where it was. I went to see you guys not too long after that
It
at
was
one of your shows.
probably, was it at the Danvers Historical Society?
Probably something
Yeah,
like that. It wasn't too far away. It was in
right. Yeah.
Danvers. Yes.
Right, yeah, I think that's where you
Mhm.
came, and yeah, Giovanni was also performing his
Yes. Yeah.
stand-up
Yeah.
comedy that night as well, and yeah, that's the gig that we used to headline on a regular basis, and what inspired us to develop, like I said,
Right.
these other shows outside of the pirate demographic.
Right. So, independent acting and groups, and in your case, your musical group is an acting group as well. You get to do all that kind of. It's a big range of stuff that your group does. Can't really
Mhm.
call it a band. Can't really call it an acting troupe. It's kind of both. You
that's a,
know.
that's a good way. That's a good way to put it. We are trying to market it as well as, doing straight up music shows too, because I have noticed that that's something that's out there too.
Yeah.
A lot of clients will book somebody that's a performance troupe, but if they can do music, they'll book it and just say, "Oh, just give us your music show." So
Right.
that's something that Michael and I have actually tried to develop too. In fact, the Attleboro gig I was telling you about, even though we work in Josephine's mermaid dance at the end as the grand finale, which has to coincide with the story,
Mhm.
90% of that show is music based. It's all sea shanties and things like that, and light comic bits in between the songs.
Do you have a social media presence with your crew?
I do, yes. To learn more about what I do with the troupe, you can go on kingserpent.com, which leads to my Facebook of King Serpent and my Instagram and Twitter as well.
Great, great. You're in the modern era, even though you're a pirate. So, at this point in your career, uh, any regrets?
Any regrets? No, no
That's
regrets at all.
amazing. I mean, you got a roof over your head.
Yep.
You doing what you love,
Hmm.
and you're with people that you collaborate with creatively. I mean, what could be better than that?
Well, I will admit my current life has even excelled it a little more because, as well as doing all this performance stuff, I'm proud to say that as of last year and moving to this year and now to next year, I'm also working as the theater director and acting instructor for Camp Evergreen over in Andover. I basically run their theater arts program.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
And for me, that means so much to me because I wasn't expecting that the kids would make such a difference in my life, but it's become a torch pass as well, as far as how I look at it.
I know the feeling as a teacher, and I did summer camp for many years, uh,
Hmm.
a lot of years. And
Well, I'm sorry. Let me get
no,
back to what you were saying before about regrets. The
sure,
reason I don't have any regrets, I mean, obviously there are points in my life, like everybody else, where you question it and say, I should have turned left when I turned left when I should have turned right.
sure.
Do I have those moments in my life? Absolutely.
Yeah,
But I like to use them as learning tools.
yeah. That's the only way to do it. Now, what would
Right.
you tell young people who were at, a crossroads? They don't know what they want to do, and they have a passion, but it hasn't really blossomed within them. They don't quite know whether they should go through with it and risk it all on that. What would you tell them?
I would tell them, um, I guess the quote is, it's a quote from the Rocky Balboa movie that came out in '06. If you know what you're worth, go out and get what you're worth, but be ready to take the hits because you are going to get hit. You
Right.
are going to have people in the industry, whether they really believe that you're this way or whether they're just doing this for their own personal needs because they're insecure, they're going to try to bring you down. Be ready to take those hits, but be ready to rise above them.
Professional jealousy within the entertainment world. Who would have thought, huh?
Unfortunately, just like, it's like that in every industry. It's like that. But never blame other people for your shortcomings. Your parents may have raised you and they guardian you, but the minute you come out of your parents, you are the person that you're going to become. Make sure that you are being true to yourself. And if it means focusing on a passion like art, and you have the drive, and you are told that you can excel at this and you want to, you have a responsibility to do it.
That's great. And with that, we will end this interview. And Dave, thank you very much for joining me here on What Do You Want to Do? And we'll have you back sometime.
Absolutely, Leonard. This was an absolute honor and pleasure. Thank you for recruiting me for this show. And to the young listeners and viewers who will see this show, I hope you get something out of everything I've talked about.
I'm sure they will. So, Dave, thank you very much. And to all of you, join us again next time with another guest. Until then, what do you want to do?